dark or light. Okay, so I thought I would talk a little bit about the life forces, just about them kind of pure, not attached to anything else, and see if I add anything different or give another insight than what you've had already, because different people talking about them can sort of bring a different emphasis on that kind of thing. I must say, though, that what I noticed today when I decided to do this, I realised, why don't I seem able to remember? You know, because I know this really, really well. And what I've realised is sort of basically, this is my intro about myself, about it. A bit like all the Pelin tools that I learned and studied and then taught to other people in the early 2000s for a little while, and especially the tools that I really like, that this is one that I really like, so I feel I know it really well. But what I realised today for the first time has happened in recent years, because I haven't thought of them and I haven't had them at the forefront, and I've been focusing on other things, like suddenly in 2014 I had to become an expert on psychopathic kind of people, which was all about, which, you know, wasn't focused on the tools anyway. I've realised they've become like what's called the unconscious contribution. Whereas they used to be conscious, so I'm teaching the difference between conscious and unconscious contribution as an intro now. When we first learn something, you know, it's really conscious and it goes in consciously. We have to make it understand things, and even information that comes up from our unconscious, we make that conscious, and that becomes, it's all what we're learning. I guess it's we're learning on the wheel of change. And then eventually, once you feel you know it, it becomes unconscious and it's just their background. And I know this material informs me a lot in my work and in my life and just how I go about life. But it wasn't till today when I was thinking about, well, I'm going to be talking about these things, and I suddenly realized, oh, I think it's become the unconscious contribution, and I have to actually kind of open the file at the back of my brain and try and scrape it out. So that's my intro about that. Now I'll move on to the life forces. It's always like to start with caring. So caring life force, and I always have to say, it was David Pelin originally called it rejectiveness, and it's like, to me, unless I say that, or by saying that, it really adds a lot, I feel, because the word care, I mean, it was a clumsy word and Peter decided to change it quite a lot of years ago, but then caring, it's like, oh, can be misunderstood, mamby-pamby kind of thing, ordinary sort of word, and it's like, no, it's really something very, very specific. It's from the hurt of feeling deeply, personally rejected for the who I am, deep in my being, in my soul, in my spirit, whatever it is. So it's about, we have a lot of caring life force if we have a lot of pain inside us from the need to feel accepted, deep personal kind of acceptance of, this is who I am, the person that I feel myself to be and experience myself to be on my insides. If in our development, if that is allowed a safe place to be and to be seen by people and valued, then you end up without the pain of rejectiveness. those of us who don't feel we got that, we end up with that hurt as a major motivator to contribute from that hurt. That's why it's called contribution from hurt as an overall Pellin word, phrase. Because we're kind of driven to contribute to the world from our greatest source of hurt, our deepest wounds, our most personal, very specific to ourselves wound. And that's where we've got most to offer, because we utterly know it deeply from inside our being. So, yeah, I think I veered off halfway through a sentence there, but so those of us who've got a lot of that have that need to contribute from that place, and it makes us want to be therapists or teachers or, you know, foster carers, social workers, all that type of thing. Shall I go through all three? Has anybody got a preference? Would you rather I stop there and does anybody want to talk more about that one before I move on?
Well, I was interested, how do you know when Peter talks about his background of the caring life force, he talks about having a lot of love and acceptance. And I know in the performance life force, I would say I did get a lot of attention rather than that I didn't get attention. So I wondered if you had a take on that side of it when you have the need fulfilled, but it still creates a need to contribute.
Good question. I'll answer it about the performance life force separately. So I'll move on to that one in a minute, but I'll mention the thing about, exactly as you say, Peter says, so he got love and caring, and surprise, surprise, about me, I always completely forget that of course equally is another source of having caring life force put in, because it's actually put in by people caring for us,
right,
given it. I'm always completely blind. I completely forget that. Is that a question, Cynthia?
Yes, it is. Also, I was wondering, like, are some people, I mean, do you think that some people are kind of by nature more sensitive? Because the thing about you sometimes get it from being put in, and sometimes you don't. But like, are some children more sensitive to problems with the care? I mean, do you have like sort of a, because it seems to me, just observing people, and when I know that some people, you know, will react to the same pain by the rejected part, you know, feeling rejected is what's going to upset them more, or you know, and I'll be like or not having material stuff's going to upset them more, or not having, I mean, with all three, are some people more vulnerable to hurts in the three areas than others, just by who they are and their nature?
I think that's the question about, is it nature or is it nurture?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could very well be the case. I kind of think that I was probably naturally born an introvert, but I will never actually know. Or, you know, is that what very quickly I became? I don't know. So the way I see it, I mean, you're asking me in a theoretical way, so that's a different question to, like, more normally I might get those types of questions from a client who's asking me not out of theoretical interest, but out of, you know, some more specific content that they're troubled by about themselves. And then to that, I'm always able to say, I don't know. Whatever we're born with, I can't do anything about that. I can only do anything about what got done to us later, you know. So that's the only bit that I can do anything with. So I guess it's up to everyone to make up their own mind about to what extent we're born like it. Or yeah, it's very interesting though. Love to find out someday. Elizabeth.
Okay. Okay, I'm unmuted now. First of all, please bear with me. This is only a half-formulated question. What happens when the hurt in the caring life force area is so great that somebody retreats and shuts off? Because I have observed that in myself. And, you know, I was hurt pretty deeply in that area, and I have kind of no desire to make a contribution in that area at all.
Can I answer it with a question first?
Yeah.
What do you feel? Because you must be able to feel, you've got an awareness, so you've learnt the tools, you know about caring life force, and you identify that as existing in you, right? So what would you say, what does it feel that it pulls you towards or against or something?
When the caring life force feels, and my words are going to be very clumsy here, active in me, what it pulls me towards is empathizing with and lifting up people whose brains don't work like most people's.
There you have it. There's you drawn towards making a contribution from a very specific hurt to a matching very specific hurt. Empathizing with. There's the contribution. And you might not be, I don't know, you might be thinking of it as, oh, I'm contributing to that person. It's not what your conscious aim is, but you will be contributing to that person because, wow, they're receiving empathy for their hurt and they can feel that you know what that hurt is.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, all those careers you listed in the caring life force sound absolutely horrifying to me.
Oh, okay.
Not like for other people to do, but, you know, picturing myself in that seat.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, like you say, careers, so they're a bit easy to roll off the tongue. Oh, this kind of job and that kind of job. But you've just identified much more specifically the specific type of, the specific spot, the specific feeling of the hurt that's in you that is pulled, that when it sees the matching hurt in somebody else is pulled towards it. That is your caring life force, and you are making a contribution there.
Okay.
And they'll be feeling it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Because I think it's not formulaic. There isn't an inevitability about that's going to be where your work contribution is. It's just kind of sketching it out to give people an idea where they might be drawn.
Examples of the kinds of things. And I can think, because another thing, you know, okay, I can elaborate a little bit on like our hurt, whichever one of the three hurts we're talking about. If we manage to find nourishing outlets for it, helpful ones that feel like, oh, thank goodness, I've made a connection there. That's us making a contribution and then being fed by the contribution. That's the nature of contribution from hurt. It's, you know, feeds each other. Whatever the details are of each individual's need for contribution, if we can find outlets, well, that is, if we can't find nourishing outlets for it, we'll be, that pain will be trying to find an outlet, and it will find something somewhere, and it will make us, like, if it's caring life force, codependently clingy, needing to rescue people or something like that. Yeah, because it's actually, it's like, oh, I need that part of me to be deeply accepted. Love me, like me, love me, like me. And it's very one-on-one. The caring life force is one at a time. And it kind of knows, it recognizes people who aren't going to match it at all, you know, run away from somebody who hasn't got enough caring life force to connect. Shall I move on to performance life force?
You just want to fill in, Cease, where, you know, what you've done so
Cease
far.
here now.
Sorry?
Cease here?
Yes.
Cease here. Oh.
Because you're
right.
on the pad, you can see.
Right, somehow I need to make myself invisible and get Cease visible. Here she is, right. I don't know how to make myself invisible.
Why do you need to be invisible?
Because I've only got room on my screen for 4 people at a time, and you're the
Oh.
final one in.
Do you have room on the screen if you put on gallery mode? Do you have it on speaker
Yeah, I've
mode?
just gone in. I'm in gallery mode.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
on an iPad, that's why it's different from a laptop.
If I was able to cancel myself and come in last, I'd get everybody else except me. But anyway, I can see you now, Cease. I just have to glide you over.
Okay.
So, Mary, you were going to fill Cease in, were you?
No, I
Was
just
that what
wondered
you were
if you wanted to, where you were
Oh,
at
right.
before you went on.
Okay. I don't know how long Cease has been there for.
Not long.
Okay. So I'm running it today, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about the life forces. And I've gone through caring life force at the moment. And people are asking me questions. Is that enough for now? I'll go through the others.
I do actually have a question for you if you wanted to answer it. I think it's rather fascinating how, and I just wonder if you have any thoughts about this. I don't know if everyone's heard your story, but I think some of it came up in Virtual Pen in Italy. I think it's really fascinating, given what a desert, like worse than a desert for caring life force your childhood was. And you talk about those, you know, that moment when you saw compassion and caring existed in your grandfather, and then he wasn't there and almost immediately. Do you have any thoughts about how caring became, like, how did you find so much care from having
hurt.
existed in?
It was the hurt. And I don't know I know it's hugely significant that I had that, you know, inspiration from my grandfather in that moment. So that made it become able to be conscious kind of thing, although I didn't know the words empathy and compassion at the time, but it's like, blam, wow, this thing exists. So I don't know without that if I would have had the hurt, but it might have been harder for me to stumble towards contributing from it, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I used it to connect up with living things as a child, you know, first trees and then farm animals I got access to. And that grew it by me connecting with, and feral cats, you know, this sort of nearby little farm. And yeah, I shut people out because I thought they didn't have this mysterious ingredient. And so, but I had this, I did connecting with whatever I could find that was alive. And so I just because I had access to the from when I was 10 to this small holding with 3 cows and some rabbits and some chickens and lots of feral cats. And it's interesting, I didn't befriend the family dog, their dog, because the dog connected to the people, right? So I befriended, first of all, the calf that was absolutely petrified of humans. So she was first. And then, I don't know how I did it, but I used to clean out these rabbit cages. And somehow, I don't know how, the feral cat took to and ended up running towards me and would run up my leg and sit on my shoulder and watch me, but would run away from everybody else. I don't know how I did that. And then I discovered, I mean, I just had dealings with these rabbits, and so you become expert at what you know, don't you? And I didn't realize I was just cleaning out rabbit cages and doing that. And then Mrs. Barnett, whose place it was, she came one day and she was trying to separate out the bucks and the does of this particular litter. And she was just turning, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She turned them upside down and rummage about in their private part. I thought she was mad. And then put them, this one here and this one there. I was just standing there dumbfounded, because I knew exactly which ones were bucks and does, because from the shape of their eyebrows.
Oh.
And I just knew that from an observation, and you think it's normal, don't you, as a kid? So, you know, those have got prettier faces, frankly. They've sort of got smoother eyebrows, and bucks have got sharper eyebrows. Anyway.
I wonder if anyone else has discovered that. Sounds very interesting.
Anyway, all a bit of a long aside, I guess. Okay,
no,
so
it really shows the power of the need to connect. It reminds me a little bit of what happens with children playing in you know, doing sound tray therapy. Just that what they know what they need to get better. You just see that by watching them play. So that is a really fascinating part of your story, that you knew you had to connect, but you had to connect with what was safe.
Safe, yeah, exactly. Animals never ever say stupid, hurtful rubbish. No. Okay, so before I lose my sense of direction altogether, I'll go on to performance life force. So we developed performance life force around hurt to do with the need for attention and applause and admiration, which is a much less personal kind of reward that we're looking for than the acceptance of caring life force. We need this, it's very specific, but our performance life force doesn't care who's applauding us, and the more the merrier, and we're not attached to caring who it is. So with all of them, I think this connects to Mary's question. So it's not necessarily about not enough or too much. It can be either. So little toddlers are renowned. They've got masses of performance life force, and they need that need met. So they'll be dancing on the table. Look at me, put it on the swing. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And they need that need met. And the ones who don't get it, you know, eventually they're going, look at me, mummy, look at me. And they just never, ever, or, you know, not enough, get that feeling of, yay, mummy's looking at me, or that person's looking at me. And it causes the deep wound. That is one way for the deep wound to be caused. And so then they might tend to grow up to be attention seeking. And then people get put down, or like, oh, you're just attention seeking. Yeah. And why is that put down? Point is, I need attention. But also it can come from, you know, you can sometimes see some parents there, you can sort of get a sense that they're not able to connect properly. The parent might not be able to connect to the child, not in love and caring life force. They're just constantly, yeah, well done, well done, well done, bravo, you know. And there's no connection. It's just, they've read the book that says be positive, so they're just frenetically being positive and not actually connecting. But equally, that is not meeting the need, because the child can feel, well, I'm not actually getting any attention. They're just going through the ropes. You know, it's not connecting with me. So, and that can work. So that person can end up with a lot of performance life force, but it's sort of driven from, you know, they're habituated to looking outside themselves for the motivation to keep putting the energy out, because, you know, they're sort of got trained to look outside themselves, but it never quite worked. So they're hooked on continuing to look outside themselves, and it still never works. I don't know if I managed to make any sense of that, what I was saying there. So I'm trying to say each of these things, it's not necessarily that there's not enough of the thing, it's just wrong for us in some way. It doesn't match our need. Yes, Cynthia.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about, and that this was something new when you said that in the performance life force, it doesn't matter where the praise and applause comes from, but in the caring life force, you want accepted. And I would think maybe with the material life force, because I remember, and this is personal too, because I feel the same way about some things, but one of the things in years back when I was a teacher, they would talk about, you know, ways to give positive attention to students, and talking about how some students were different, and some of them actually calling them out and saying good job in front of everybody is actually embarrassing to them, and that they're going to respond much better either to like a little personal note or something very quiet. And I was wondering if that has to do with the difference between, you know, the caring and the performance. You know, if you want, you know, a nice letter from your teacher saying that you did a good job rather than, or am I reading more into it?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Because I can identify with that. When I was a kid, I already had the caring life force wound, and attention was excruciating, because when the parents put attention on me, it was always, I felt like examining me to try to find where the magic defect was that they were so convinced I was born with. So that was going in deep, deep. So, yeah, I would either have been indifferent, if anybody was going, oh, good job to me, I'd have either been indifferent, like, because it just doesn't connect with me, or like, just, yeah, really excruciating self-consciousness I had as a kid. So that would have just been awful. And the one time I had a teacher, I had a human being who I knew saw me. It was when I was 10, had that teacher for 3 terms. And it was never spoken, and she never, I mean, that was part of it, that I knew she had the sensitivity to know that I was alive and well, and there was nothing wrong with me, I just didn't speak. And that would have been for very good reasons. She knew, she trusted that. And yeah, she never, there wasn't even a personal note, nothing, not even a eye contact even once. We never spoke of it, but I knew that she could see me and she knew I was perfectly fine. So yeah, caring life force needs something small and subtle, and it doesn't need anything performancey about it. I even remember the one time, I don't know why she would have done it, sort of randomly, she said this thing of, oh, here's the blackboard, you know, anybody wants to, and she gave out some words to spell, and you could run up, grab the chalk and write it down. Of course, Linda White was running up and writing random letters. She couldn't spell at all, but she just had to do this thing. And then one of the words was kernel, not the nut. And of course I knew how to spell kernel. It was completely obvious to me, as far as I was aware. And then I saw these kids go racing up to the board, frantically, wild guesses at how to, you know. And again, I was always just dumbfounded at human beings. I couldn't understand why they were doing this, given that they hadn't a clue how to spell it. I was dumbfounded that they didn't know how to spell it. I thought, how can this be that they all don't know how to spell it? And they're all excited about showing that they know how to spell it. And then it sort of dawned on me. It's like, I don't know what I thought, but it was this same teacher. I guess it was a moment of me thinking, I can tell her that I know. And I kind of, I mean, it was the bravest thing I ever did probably, but I crept up to her and I whispered to her. I remember saying, is it C-O-L? And it's like, I knew how to spell it, but it was like, is it? And I remember her getting all excited on my behalf for me, you know, saying, yes, write it on the board, write it on the board. And I'm like, oh no, how excruciating. Now I've got to write it on the board. I'm sure I write microscopic little writing, you know. Anyway, bit of a long wordy answer to the question, I guess.
In that example, you felt the connection of the care and life force, but she moved it in a performance life force direction that was really hard for you.
That's right, thank you. You're right. Because she then put it into her terms of reference, thinking, what a great thing. She was really glad for me that, hey, I'm showing what I can do. And I'm like, I don't want to show what I can do. That's not the point. Have I said all I wanted to say about performance life force? Any other questions about performance?
I have
life
one.
force? Who's that? Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So how does performance life force relate or not to the desire for specific critique? Like, it doesn't matter who gives it, but you want more than just, yay! You want, oh, I see this thing you did here and how it works with this, and that's really good.
And sort of like, and that's very clever of you. It's very, I see what you mean. That it's a very specific recognition, right? For you personally. Oh my word, I don't know if I know the answer.
That they understand how it worked, what you did.
Yeah. Cease.
I know the research, since I studied child psychology is that kids need both the broad kind of recognition and the specific, like, you're a great kid. And I really liked how you did that puzzle. That was so ingenious, how you you figured that out. So people need both of those things. And I think it's, you're a great human being, or you're I care about you, and that you have these specific skills is a way to recognize your talents. And I think that's, from what they've said, that's important for children. So like you were saying, Nikki, just saying, oh, you're good, that's not enough. That's kind of a toss-up or something. It's not
rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But it's not, I mean, it's meant to be good, but it's not specific enough for a person to take it in. And so I think that's what has real meaning for kids, is to like you were saying, the performance, that your performance, you were getting something, you were talented in something, that's extremely important too. So we all have that, I'm an okay person and I can do this. And I think that's, I don't know if I ever mentioned Babies, the movie. Did I already mention that on Netflix? If you get Netflix, watch Babies. That's a great series. Oh my God. It's amazing what babies are picking up at 3 months, or 2 months, the things that they're starting to understand. And and they really talk about how the babies need both of those things for mom and dad. It's and the bonding that's needed. So I just, it's fun to watch. So I recommend it.
Okay.
If you like that kind of stuff, it's great.
And I think taking what you're saying, Cece, and putting it in the context of the life forces in the way Elizabeth's asking it, it makes me think, my conclusion, the answer that I'm thinking up on the spur of the moment, is that thing you're talking about, Elizabeth, that Cece is now talking about, the specific attention, you're really good at that. I wonder if that kind of moment is actually a very neat connection of performance and caring life force needs being met at the same moment.
Mm-hmm.
Why that feels so good, it's enriching to the need to be connected with, and it's really specific to me, aren't I clever? Whee! So it's performance as well. That's my guess.
You may not be able to see, because I don't know who's on your screen, but Cynthia wanted to ask something or contribute something.
Cynthia, yes, thank you.
Well, I was thinking about Elizabeth's question, and having been raised in, a family with a working mom who wasn't paying attention a lot of times, because she was, and plus there was other things going on. But I think there's also a sense of, if somebody's just giving general critique, you don't really know if they're paying attention or they're just sort of humoring you. I don't know. That's just my own sense. If they're just saying, "Oh, good job," they, and I know with me with specific critiques, it's actually two things. One, it's nice because the person's paying attention, but because a lot of times, when I grew up with at least one of the partners my mom was with. Well, actually, even my grandparents were very, very critical. So, if somebody gets too specific, I'm like, oh dear, and knowing that it's going to be, and it's performance life force. I guess that's a tangent, but I'm just thinking about that. Like if somebody's really telling you, just my own feeling of that, very specific, they're paying attention to you. I mean, because they've taken the time to really. And I don't know, carry performance, but I can tell my own is I always get nervous, and if it's okay, I'm fine. But that I know that's what gets me real nervous.
Critique, if it's a positive thing, then you're fine, right?
Well, yeah, I'm always relieved when it's actually positive. When, like if it's all critique positive, and then that's embarrassing. But you know, but but yeah, that you know, general, like I'm always actually feel much, you know, it's. But yeah, that whole thing about whether you're being paid attention to or not, and yeah, I get nervous if the attention's too close, because but yeah. Anyways, I'm babbling now.
No, and that is to do with the hurt or the nourishment of our needs for attention being met, because it's like, okay, well, I'm getting attention, but oh, it could veer into it's bad attention in a minute. Is it going to be nourishing, or is it going to hurt me? So yeah, no wonder then it leaves you with a kind of anxiety about that. Oh, I kind of like it. Oh no, but it might be excruciating if it's a positive thing, because I'm not used to that, because I'm more used to the critical thing anyway. But I hate that.
Thanks, Cynthia. That actually makes a whole lot of sense.
Good. Shall I go on to material life force? Did I answer Mary's question that you asked at the end of the caring life force thing? And I said, let me link it to performance.
I'm not sure now, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, it was about getting a lot of attention and praise when you're small, and then having performance life forces like an additive thing, I think. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Not close enough to the question Mary asked, I feel like, for me to quite remember it.
Yeah, sorry, I
Mary
can't recall it now.
Mary can't remember it, then I guess we don't need to worry.
Actually, I did have one more question on the performance life force, and it's actually a very.
Gone a bit quiet, Cynthia.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's because I was going to talk about something personal, and then I start getting real quiet.
Yeah, we don't want to hear that.
But well, no, because I did this YouTube channel, and I started it last year or last fall, and I was fine, and I did it every week when like I had maybe 20 people viewing and nobody viewing, and then I had one that got hundreds of views. And then I did one more after that, and I had no more energy to do it. And I'm wondering, you know, I thought like maybe part of me was like, well, okay, was I evaluating her purpose? Because it's a lot of trouble and a lot of things. But I also realized, wait a minute, it was after the one that actually got a lot of views that I stopped wanting to do it. So I'm wondering if that's probably a performance life force.
Yeah, the hurt of a lot of the attention you used to get in your development was critical attention. So then the more people are watching you, the more scary it is, because, well, which one of them is going to shoot me? And if it's a small number, that's much more in the caring life force. If it's crowd, it automatically creates performance life force, because then they are an audience rather than a compassionate sort of holding environment. So it does put us into a whole other space. So, okay, moving on to material life force. So it's around the need for material security. So it hurts around that. I have to actually look at my notes that I made about that, because it's the one I feel I've got a very specific take on it personally to myself, and so it's hard for me to remember all the other ways that it applies. So it might be, where am I? So, you know, being hurt in our development around our need for material security, that can manifest in various different ways. So somebody might be really insecure about money and housing and so on, and that might either drive them to fixate on earning loads in order to not feel that anxiety, or to go the opposite way, but not be able to handle it because of getting sort of swept up and consumed by the insecurity. Or it might instead be about possessions. You know, some people just have to own a lot of objects. From the point of view, they're sort of like represent security blanket things. That's different from another type of person who just has to buy lots of things, but they're actually coming from performance life force of, ta-da, look at this amazing thing I've got, showing off the thing. Whereas if somebody, you know, so two behaviors can be actually from two very different places. Somebody might be, I have to own things because I keep lots of things around me and I feel safe in the world then. It's and that it's not about showing off the marvelous things you've got at all, not about performance.
Nicky, can I?
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is the right question or not now, but this is, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, but it's so rampant, especially in American society, that people are judged by how much money they have or things they have or things that they can do. And not everybody's like that. Other people are moderate. Yes. And I just wonder, you know, you start to wonder, yes, you're well off, but how much more do you need? I mean, what is the point where they've had enough that they don't have to keep accruing millions or billions of dollars? So I think that's a huge, how money has become this, like you were talking about, this means that you're successful. But if you're already successful, how much more successful do you need to be? Is this, seems like a real way that our society is broken. And I don't know if there's any way to deal with that. Just giving them more is not, it doesn't work.
No, exactly. So, but it's in the culture, isn't it? And it's capitalism. Yes. But actually, the person, you know, the people who are driven to do that, for each of those individuals, it's their material life force needs. And that's why it doesn't matter how many millions, billions of dollars they've got, how many houses they've got, how many cars, how many antique cars they store up. Doesn't matter. It makes no difference to how they feel. They're just acquiring, because it's that desperate need to fill that need for the pain of the feeling insecure in the material world. And then of course they have to do stupid things with it, like we had, you know, back when the crash happened, and that's when it was sort of really obvious here in 2008, and all those bankers, they'd done crazy stuff so that they had all this money, basically sort of ran off with all the money by chopping up, by conceptualizing material, you know, mortgages, wasn't it? And chop that, oh, this is, and then it's just abstractified. Oh, this is risk. Oh, that's worth a lot. But it's just, it's completely made up concept, you know, or we'll pay a lot for this risk. Madness. But all those people tunnel visioned into that thing, living in that world of, I guess, some combination for everybody of material and performance life forces, all emotionally starving to death, by the way, not, you know, and then, you know, having to do cocaine to run on empty, and then it turns out the city of London, on a, you know, full of all these jewellery shops because they're all having to buy diamonds on their way home from work because they've got to use something to spend the money on. Otherwise it all becomes illogical. It was illogical. And it's all this hurt, just hurt.
Do you think there's anything our Pelham tools can do to deal with
Change the
that?
world.
Yeah, change the world. That's all I want to do. But
Yeah,
positive. But what would be the tool or tools? It just seems like it's so destructive, and yet we've never really learned how to deal with that at all.
No. I mean, well, if everybody in the world was taught the life forces, that would help, wouldn't it? But of course, those people with all the, you know, huge amounts of performance.
I have thoughts.
Oh, you've got thoughts? Okay.
Go ahead, go on.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's
okay.
fine.
So as somebody with a lot of material life force, I found that I'm trying to find the best way to put this. That for me, there's a lot of types of acquisition that are completely unsatisfying, but that I might be tempted towards to, you know, deal with the hurt from which material life force springs, but that the more specific to what kind of material stuff actually is bone deep satisfying, then sort of the less overall I end up actually needing. So, like, money in a bank account is kind of pretend, right? It can be counted, it's very much part of the material life force, but you can't touch it, and it is mainly potential. Whereas a cupboard stocked with high quality baking supplies that I know I could turn into whatever I wanted is really bone deep satisfying. And I don't need a lot of them. I just need the variety enough that I could come in and say, I've decided to make this random thing, and I have the ingredients on hand because I'm stocked. And they're the best quality I can get. And I think a lot of people with a lot of material life force, if they closely examine what actually helps, would need less overall and would hit a point at which they were satisfied.
I think you're right, because what strikes me from what you're saying is when you say what, did you say emotionally helps, or did you say what really helps?
What really helps.
What really helps. And I think it's very specific to every individual. You know, if everyone can identify what really helps themselves, bone deep, like you say. Like, I'm not that at all. What I discovered is I'm somebody I have to have. Struck when you were talking about money in the bank, and it's like it's potential, and it's like, whoa, I don't see it. My experience of it is not like that at all. I know, I spotted from young, I'm like the opposite way round. I can go without in the present, but I have to have, overall, money has to be to a, doesn't matter how much, it has to be going up in the bank for me to feel secure. If it starts going down, I feel insecure. Now, that's all relative, because if there's enough in there, then I don't have to worry so much if it goes down. But it's about having, because cash is mobile. So basically, because I didn't grow up with emotional security and not a feeling of, you know, I can count on anybody to care for, look after. I mean, there was no, it was emotional, look after me emotionally. That's what it was. It's like, but, and I didn't know how to look after me emotionally, but I kind of somehow knew money, which, as you say, is, what was your word for it? It's mobile or something. It's potential.
Potential, that's the word.
That's it. So I kind of somehow knew its potential for rescuing myself in some way. So that's why, and it was a clinging thing, definitely. And I had to, it's like, when I was earning little, I had to spend very little because I had to make sure it was still going up a little bit. Yeah, anyway, so it's really, really different how everybody experiences money.
And I think kind of the genius in teaching people how to recognize their relationship to the material life force is Marie Kondo. And Cynthia, who is familiar with Marie Kondo's work, would be able to tell me if I'm on the right track with that. But her way of teaching people to tune in to how their possessions, etc., make them feel is, I mean, frankly, it's groundbreaking. And I'm curious if Cynthia agrees with me on this.
Yeah,
I can't see
think
her.
so. Yeah, I think so too. It was actually I mean, for me, it was life changing. But it's really funny though, and I was thinking about, there was something else. Since I now got the floor, I'm going to use to talk about. I think for me, no, on this personal level, because actually when you were first talking about, you know, the hurts, and that was a personal reason rather than academic reason, I was wondering about nature versus nurture, is because I seem to have come out of, you know, I came out of a childhood and a background where none of the life forces were secure. And we didn't have money. I mean, we didn't have, and my family comes from a poor background. And, you know, you know, I already talked about my big mess around performance life force, but somehow I grabbed onto, in terms of where I think I've been drawn to make contributions where I have, it's always seemed to be in a material life force, which I didn't recognize till I learned about. Because I thought, well, my finances are usually a mess, and I'm never been real big about earning a whole lot of money. But then I realized, you know, the things that I'll do, like when I was a lawyer, my big thing was helping people in a material way get through this whole process and be okay. You know, and it was a very material, and even when I was teaching, it was like teaching when I was teaching special ed, and the idea was, pardon me for the interruption, it was about helping people use the skills that they had to compensate for what they didn't, to sort of make them as independent as possible with what they could do and what they couldn't do. And I did it with astrology too. My astrology is, you know, I don't do a very counseling one. I'm a very practical, people I've done charts for. I'm a very it's a very pragmatic, what's the weaknesses, how to work around them and stuff like that. And I was wondering, why in the world would material life force stick out? And I mean, I was thinking about my grandmother, who was, you know, a genius in the material life force. But I also was thinking just now when listening kind of tangentially to, it's tangent my mind went in, but material life force is something I could at least have an illusion of control over. You know, I mean, you can't control what other people are going to do. You can't control whether you're going to receive caring. You can't even control whether people are going to accept your caring or reject it. You can't control what kind of attention you receive, but you can at least make some sort of, you know, you can at least in terms of, at least you have an illusion. Actually, you don't, because, you know, things like whether people pay you, whether you get a job and that kind of thing. But there's an illusion of control there. And I've also noticed when I'm doing well and I'm not doing well, a lot has to do with how the signs will show. I mean, I don't necessarily look visibly depressed. I don't necessarily, you know, I mean, I used to act out, but that was other things going on. But if my area is neat, I'm usually doing fine. If I'm not doing well, everything gets messy. What I eat, how I spend money, like if I, you know, do that. But anyways, that's another, sorry, I'm trying to, but the main point was for me, it was like, I knew growing up, the thing in my head, and when I was going to school and when I, you know, I think, oh, I made bad career choices because I, you know, tried to do things that would make money, but I didn't really have a passion for them. But the thing was getting out. Having enough money to support myself meant that I didn't have to live in other people's chaos. But I had the way out was through the material life force, was through getting a job, being able to support myself and not being reliant on other people, which is kind of funny because now I'm kind of, my spouse is the breadwinner and you know, and I'm not, but it's just a little strange, but it's okay. Things are okay and it's working fine. And I know I'm making a contribution there, but sorry, I went off on a lot, but I think that whole thing of control and being self-sufficient and knowing that I can get out if I have to. If things are crazy, I'm not stuck, where is a huge motivating thing for me. So anyways, I guess that's all I want to say.
That explains a lot about why a well-stocked cupboard and the ability to cook has been so important to me, because as a child, my diet was subject to a lot of chaos. And that was, the people who raised me had toxic and constantly fluctuating relationships to food. And it is the ability to rescue myself if the way other people are handling food in the household goes bad. So yeah, that's really interesting, Cynthia.
And to do with control for you as well. That's that aspect, isn't it?
Yeah, control and the ability to rescue oneself. I'm really finding that particular thread of self-rescue and the material life force really interesting.
And you know, I'm interested about that because I have a self-rescue thing, but it's got nothing to do with having food in the cupboard, or you know, I'm really struck by material objects. Okay, I'm a bit over surrounded by material objects, but it's all kind of a mess and I can't get in control of it. But I still haven't worked that out yet. That's the remainder of where my mess is exhibited, in the material world immediately around myself, whilst I'm doing much better at controlling my sort of material security, but just the sort of immediate, kind of less significant to me, I guess, in the least significant area. It's like, oh God, when am I going to get rid of junk? I don't know, it's really annoying, but it's not my motivating thing. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, just something. I'm really struck by the variety of different ways we can have in our heads for rescuing ourselves using the material life force, you know, with our MO with material life force. And then just on a slightly different subject, coming back to what Cynthia was, the first half of what Cynthia was saying, I was struck by that it was all a really good sounding combination of material and caring life force, like be a lawyer and motivated by your caring life force to help that person's material life sort out. And then likewise, in the type of education you were doing, caring life force to help that person's in the material world in ways that they needed help in the material world. And then you're doing it with astrology as well. It's the same, that it's really hand in glove, that caring and material life force is really working hand in hand with each other. Oh, and I had another comment about that for Cynthia, about, like you said, so it's always been about material life force and control of that, and now you don't know how that works out because now you're not, you know, your spouse has got that. But I can see that as like, oh well, that's an evolvement, if that's a word, of you working out that issue within yourself, because now you have involved another person in it and you're trusting that person in a caring life force relationship with them to hold that end of it for you. So that's I see that as forward, like I say, a further a whole step of evolution as an individual, about working through the issues to do with material and caring life force hand in hand, but for about yourself, about your own life. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yes, thank you.
So, any other comments or?
I guess one thing I'm coming away with is having some kind of balance between these different types of life force, and having kind of a creative balance too. Something that's interesting. This is just for me. I don't know why I always find it sounds, I mean, people should have wealth, but I find really, really wealthy people, I think they put too many apples in that basket, you know, and somehow they don't come across as I'm making a broad statement that's not true for everybody, but and there's probably lots of exceptions. So, but I think people are happier when they're more balanced, and that's just my observation. When there's some balance between the caring life force and the, I don't know, the wealth life force, and it's when people are always talking about money, I'm like, oh, good for you. I mean, I know they rule the world and all that stuff, but I don't that doesn't make somebody human in my point of view. You know, the
No.
humanity is having the life, caring life force and being able to relate to people, enjoying some of the talents they have, and whatever that is, artistic or dance or whatever it is, that makes people interesting. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm just feeling that from listening, that focusing just on one thing is kind of sad in a way.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it, as being about, you're exploring about that thing about the best thing is us being able to work out our issues that cause cause our pain, to do with that create our different life forces, so that once you get rid of the rawness of the pain, you can actually have them working hand in hand with each other. Like, somebody might have a lot of performance life force and they can be really annoying as a young person before they've worked it out, but then they might find a vehicle, they might find a vehicle for using it, and then they get the recognition because they're paid for it, and it's like, oh, now it can all settle down and it works for them. And then they've got their two main things might be performance and material, and they've got them working hand in hand, and that means there's room for the caring life force to coexist amongst it, because they're not busily, their performance life force isn't frantically trying to get me. So the kind of people you're talking about, when you say people who are like always talking about money, it's a bit of a giveaway. It's like, it's a screaming need for something to get resolved there, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I've noticed about very wealthy people is that their core fear seems to be exile from the sphere they inhabit.
Oh,
all their colleagues, all their friends, usually all their family, are very wealthy, and they've been taught that you must be this rich to enter. So I think a lot of the most broken tendencies of the hyper rich might just be trying to meet a caring life force wound with the material life force, because what they've been taught is they have to use material to remain accepted. Meanwhile, they are not being seen and accepted for themselves, and therefore they are always insecure, and it's never enough.
Does anybody watch Schitt's Creek?
No.
Oh God.
No.
Oh God. Oh, it's wonderful. It's exactly what you're talking about, Elizabeth. This super wealthy family has so much money and all that kind of stuff, but they lose it all. And the only thing they have is this, it's a comedy. And the only thing, it's a series, is they inherit this wacko place out someplace, we don't know where. And suddenly they're just normal people. And so they're kind of having to adjust to it. And they're still kind of withdrawing from being wealthy and super wealthy. They were super wealthy, and stars and everything. And it's about, you watch them become full-fledged people as they go through the series. That they're funny, they lose things, they develop these relationships. So one day, some of their old friends happened to be in Schitt's Creek. It was a crazy name, but they happened to come by, and they're real hoity-toity, when they go out to eat. Oh, this is not so good, and all that stuff. And then two of their friends from Schitt's Creek join them. And they're going on and on, the super wealthy people putting them down. And the guy says, stop. He said, these people here have done more for me than anybody has ever done. That they've cared for me, they've worked with me, they've shown me the way, and you have the nerve to come in here and talk against them. You can just leave. I don't want anything to do with you. Never called me after I was thrown out. You never helped me, did nothing. Bye. And but that's just kind of one episode, but I think you would love it. It's on the Comedy Channel. And, but it's exactly like that. They were lost when they weren't real people. They were just an idol of what they thought they were. Does that make sense? They were the pretend people they thought they were, because they couldn't be real people. And I guess, I know everybody's not like that, but it's just, when you have to put yourself in a situation where you're always on call, you're always have to be that way, that's not real. And that's where I feel sad for those folks. That's
I feel
yeah.
really uneasy saying that anybody isn't real people, because that's an empathy shutoff that for me can lead to very dangerous places.
Okay, I don't know if I explained myself very well when I said that. They were not fully expressing their feelings and thoughts when they were in this super rich thing. They couldn't do it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, they were not, they had a role to play, and that was the role they played, but they weren't, but you see them start, I don't know, having lots of expression and lots of feelings and lots of interactions, and it's more full. Let me just say it was more full as they move along.
Coming in touch with their caring life force as part of it.
Yes,
Instead of fixated on this hurt of their
Yeah.
material life force.
Yes.
And that's all gone, and haven't got that anymore.
Yeah.
They've just got more of everything of themselves available.
And it's also hilarious if you want to.
Sorry? Sorry? It's also what?
Hilarious.
Oh, right.
I think it's important to bear in mind that even if we don't understand it, if we inhabit the caring life force a lot, that the material life force is valid in its own right in not being, not being about people. It's, it is about organization. It's about contributing by making the world work. And it's a feature of modern society that it's taken it more and more into kind of abstract things, because that used to be about things like baking and farming and weaving and things that are kind of easier to grasp as maintaining the root organization of society. So I think I was just hearing Peter in my mind talking about remember the truth line, I think it's our job, if those of us who understand, come from inside the caring life force, to be open to accepting that that there's a human motivation that isn't about people. I think prioritizing the caring life force, because that's the one that most of us understand. Just wanted to say that in defense of the theory, really, that the theory is about the great diversity of human behavior and human needs. And it isn't a hierarchy, really. I guess I'm just saying that it's not a hierarchy, and that if we're not careful, then we can make it a hierarchy.
I was just thinking I was about to say something very similar. I was thinking about that in terms of my own family and just know, I mean, whether people have a balance or not, because I think everybody's going to have their own mixture of it. But I think it does help a lot in understanding other people and tolerating and appreciating different people. Like I am thinking about some misunderstandings in my family. You know, my grandfather had a ton of performance life force and a bunch of caring, but his material was pretty he had very little material life force. But my grandmother, you know, she didn't show affection really. I mean, she did, but people didn't get the kind of caring they wanted. But she did it in a very material life force. And she had quite a bit of performance too. But she, you know, the fact that she showed love by making sure everybody was okay. I mean, she, you know, and she was great. She was the kind of person, you had a problem and you could go to her with whatever material problem you had and she would have a solution for it. You know, she was amazing. But she wasn't very loving, and just having that understanding. And yes, the hurts are still there, but you know, you don't have it. It's not, it's like, oh, well, this is just who this person is and it's okay. And, you know, it doesn't show that, like I said, you know, I knew my grandmother loved me, not because she, you know, was sweet, nice, but I knew she would do anything for me. And she took care of her family by making sure that, you know, their material needs were met when, at a time when, I mean, they had nothing, and she managed to make sure they got a house and they survived. And, you know, and just, I think that, I don't know. I think that whole tolerance is, I think it's about, yeah, I think to me, that's what's helpful. It's about tolerance and being able to have language for this kind of stuff, you know, where instead of being consumed by it, it's like, oh yeah, that's my material life force. Okay. I don't know. I think that I think that's why this stuff seems so helpful to me, is just having the language and the tolerance for these things.
I guess I'll just say one more thing. I can see that part of my frustration is for the super rich, not for just rich people. The people, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who have bazillions of dollars, and yet people in the United States do not have universal health care. And I see people every day who are disabled or handicapped or not in good health because they cannot get universal health care. And those people can fly to the moon or to Mars or whatever they want. And it's disgusting to me that our country, with the wealth we have, has done that. And that's, I guess, where I go off on my little tangent, but we don't have normal spread of wealth here so people can live a decent life. I see people living in a tent that's been fallen down, or their family living in a tool shed. I mean, it's unconscionable about what we have, and those people are admired. And I'm thinking, that's when you got more than 50% of the rest of the population, that's not right. And I'm sorry I get off on that, but that's a serious, serious problem in our country. It's killing people.
Yes, yeah. Can I link it a little bit to, it's sort of related in some way, I can't remember what you were saying before you went off about the super rich.
Okay.
About you struggling with trying to get a balance, and you struggling, you were realizing, hey, what really works is people having a balance between the life forces. And then you went off into your struggle with people who really seriously do not have a balance and who are so ruled by their hurt of their material life that they're just on, you know, they're not able to contribute in a nourishing way, you know. And there's something for you that it hurts you personally that you can't make sense of that of that.
Yeah.
it torments you, doesn't it? And it should
I
torment
can
us
make
all, but-
sense of it. I just think it's not right.
Yeah, it's not. I know what it is. It's something like, just struggling to get it. It's something about, for you, your caring life force, and that you care. And then, so sort of a little bit to do with material life force that I haven't thought of, because like I said, it's not my one that I think of a lot. But there's something about politics. Like, people who are motivated into politics have got material life force, or ought to have. Hopefully it's not.
I'm sorry. I know the subject's too deep for this, too much for this.
But anyway, there's something about material life force and politics and carrying off that you're struggling to figure out for yourself.
Can I clarify something I said a little earlier? So I'm not saying that the material life force isn't motivating on its own, because it absolutely is. And it's absolutely valuable. I guess what I'm saying is that when I am making material contributions in a nourishing way and using that to meet the needs that motivate the material life force, it is satisfying. And people who have billions of dollars while their employees are on public aid, they are not satisfying the need they're trying to meet. And it would be valuable for them to look at what the need really is and what would actually satisfy it, because what they're doing isn't cutting it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Does that
That's
make
good.
more sense?
Yes.
That the material life force, when healthy, is satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I've got to go, but thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Cease.
Thank you.
We'll round up.
I didn't mean to be disruptive, but thank you all. That was really
You're not
helpful, Elizabeth.
disruptive. You added a lot. Thank
I
you.
really value how you. Oh, she's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. So if we just all round up with saying where we are, what the time is, what do we normally say? That's it, isn't it? Anything else we want to say? So I can start. I'm still Nicky. I'm still in Wimbledon. It's now 20 to 8 and start. Okay. Mary, do you want to go now?
I'm Mary in Rosarito Beach, and it's 20 to 1 here, and still a bit sunny, I think.
Cynthia?
Cynthia, I'm in Kankakee, Illinois, and it's still gray and cloudy, but it's not too cold. Oh, and it's what's this? It's 2:38. It looks like.
Okay, Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and it is 20 to 1.
I'm still foggy, or what is it? Grey in Oregon, right?
Well, I'm not sure right now because I had to move to where I can't see the window.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for all your contributions.
Thank you, Nicky.
Thank you, Nicky.
Thank you. Nice
you,
to see
Nicky.
everybody. And I'll get Mary. Mary's in charge of the Zoom contact, are you? I'll get you to switch off.
Yeah, I can end the meeting.